Our topic today is about enhancing project delivery and infrastructure, focusing on efficiency, innovation, and collaboration. So this is something we're often working with our customers to help you with your solutions in terms of improving your efficiency and collaboration on your projects. We also showcase our innovation at our Construction Innovation Lab in Chicago, where we bring customers like you to participate in some hands-on experiences with our construction technology. So please stop by and see us if you are interested in learning more about our Innovation Lab. So let's start with some introductions. Patrick?
Hi, everyone. My name is Patrick Thrasher. I work for the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, and I oversee the Port Department's capital program, which is about a $1.2 billion share of the plan between 2017 and 2028. Notable projects include the Port Street Corridor Improvement Project, the Wharf Rehabilitation Program, which is capital state of good repair work for us, and then reconstruction of berth 1012 in Port Newark, which is a major public bulk berth that we are about to start rebuilding.
Gwen?
Good morning. I'm Gwen Dawson. I'm the Senior Vice President of Design and Construction for Battery Park City Authority. Battery Park City Authority is owner of 92 acres at the southern tip of Manhattan. We engage in a number of different capital projects. Most notably right now, we are engaged in two major coastal resiliency projects.
Thank you. And Rich?
Hi, I'm Rich Jones. I'm the Chief Engineer at the New York City Department of Design and Construction. Specifications, contract preparation, utility coordination, and grant approval are my.
Thank you. All right, first question is for Gwen. I understand that you've recently made a shift from your traditional project delivery approach and adopted a new approach for one of your projects. So can you tell us what that approach is and how that came about?
Sure. Battery Park City Authority, I think, is along with a lot of other public agencies and entities, has traditionally relied upon a traditional design bid build approach for its capital project delivery. In 2020, as we were just starting construction with our South Battery Park City Coastal Resiliency Project and in the planning phases of our North and West projects, resiliency projects, we were provided with design build authority by the state legislature, and decided that we would pursue our second project, which would be a combination of our North and West projects, as a progressive design build project. And the decision making was primarily driven by our desire to avail ourselves of the risk transfer associated with design build, but to do it in a way that recognized that during the design process, we had a lot of stakeholders involved. We have a very active community, and we also have a lot of collaboration, interagency collaboration that's required, and the progressive design build avenue allowed us the advantage, potential cost savings and schedule savings of design build, while maintaining the ability to remain more involved as owner of the project up front, and to ensure that our neighborhood and community interests had appropriate involvement and feedback into the design process, and adequate time for collaboration with the other agencies involved.
Thank you. And Patrick, what are some of your common challenges that you're trying to solve for, and how have you been able to solve those challenges?
Sure. We have the classic problems of schedule and cost. And one of the ways that we're trying to address that, particularly for reconstruction that we see coming over the next 5, 10, 15 years along our public berths, is pursuing what for the Port Department will be our first design build project, which is this reconstruction of berth 1012. We actually had quite a long and philosophical conversation internally just a day or two ago about the relative merits of design build versus progressive design build. And it's I think we know where we're going here, but and it's for us, it's been it really required an honest look at what we knew we could do and what we knew we couldn't do. In particular, what kind of risks we could tolerate, how far we think we could be hands off versus how much we thought we would want to be involved, and really making sure that within the agency, we'd worked through all of that before we actually make a final decision that this is the way we want to pursue. And so I would say that the solutions, and we heard a little bit of this in the previous panels, like knowing everything you need to know up front before you move forward and really getting that down on paper so that everybody, even before you start outreach to the industry, that you have an idea and alignment within your own organization about why this approach makes sense, what the trade-offs are going to be in terms of giving up control versus risk transfer versus schedule improvements, things like that. And for me personally in the port department, if this is a successful project, it will set a template for what we hope can be faster and smoother reconstruction delivery for 10, 15 years worth of capital reinvestment.
You. And Rich, so Gwen and Patrick both mentioned design build. Is there anything else that your agency is exploring to improve efficiency?
Yeah, we're trying to figure out what the right contracting methods are going to be. And in some cases, that's design build, but we're not suffering from a deficiency of design build. We're suffering from a deficiency of contracting models, right? So we just got authorization to use CM build for some of our buildings work as a pilot the legislature. If that goes well, we'll get the use to use that more broadly, right? It's not that we're just jamming square pegs into round holes. It's that we need to identify all the different shapes of pegs. And for some scenarios, CM build is the right answer, where we want to retain the traditional model of doing the development up front with our designers and then go out to essentially what's like a design bid build, but with more control and earlier, and you get some of the same schedule benefits as design build, but not as much of the design risk either, because we're still in control of what we're going to be building, right? So how do we take all these right tools and then still figure out the one we want to do for the right projects?
Can I follow up on that?
Of course.
So I think this is like such a critical point. There are very specific reasons why we've identified this project as a good one for us, especially within my department, relatively new to design, build, delivery. We own the property. It's out of service, so there's relatively few operational conflicts. We understand what the NEPA implications are going to be. We understand the environmental impacts. We can nail down most of the risks that tend to cause problems on this project ahead of time. And there are other projects that we've considered design build for, where there's, I think, probably more room for innovation from the private sector in terms of layout and construction and actual design that we thought about, and then we really looked at ourselves and we realized that there were so many dependencies on getting that project site to a place where we could hand it off kind of free and clear to a JV to do the work, that all it took would be one person and one affected party to kind of flummox the whole thing. And so I think that introspection about what can we do, what can we tolerate, and what is appropriate here, it's not. Sometimes it's like, this sounds great, we should do this, everyone's doing this, and it's like, it just doesn't make sense here, but maybe it does make sense there. And I have to say, I'm interested in hearing from Gwen about how you guys made that decision.
There definitely is not a one size fits all, and I think that the beauty of the recognition of all of these different emerging models is that we have a lot of choices, and we can evaluate particular projects, particular sites, particular conditions. We have a very unique kind of situation right now where we have one major project that's underway and one major coastal resiliency project underway as a traditional design bid build. And then we have another one that's coming online as a progressive design build. And we looked at all of the different models that have been mentioned and discussed, and decided that in this particular case, Battery Park City Authority owns the bulk of the property involved. Not all of it, but the bulk of it. We felt that the ability to really retain active involvement up front was a better option for us rather than a traditional design build, where that is handed over to the design builder earlier in the process. For us as owner, for the community at large, for the collaboration that we had with that was required with the other parties. We also felt, in kind of contrasting a little bit with the design bid build or the CM at risk model, we really wanted that advantage of having the contractor and the designer working together under the same umbrella. We certainly had enough experience to know that in construction, a lot of times the issues that come up are issues of conflict between the contractor and the designer, and having that contractor involved early on, identifying those constructability issues, trying to resolve those issues up front, and having that be something that's the responsibility for reconciliation between that team was of particular appeal to us.
Thank you. Okay, Rich, what have you done to eliminate any surprises along the way during your projects?
Well, there's never been eliminate all the surprises. That's just kind of a truism. So the best thing we can do, and there's one of our other team members, Shafali, speaking on this later, is having great upfront capital planning, right? Dive into that, Bill up Earth Thunder, but that's really the best thing there. And then from there, when we come out of that great capital planning, picking the right delivery method so that we can then pick the right design methods and move on from there. For these right projects, we've been using design build as well. That's been working out great. But for a lot of our work, we're still going with design bid build because it works and it's not broken. I see a couple of our contractors in the room here, and it gives them the ability to innovate and deliver what they need to do within the boxes we set them. So yeah, that's starts with great capital planning and then making the right programmatic decisions as you move on from there.
Great. Patrick, you mentioned you have some tools that your organization is adopting to help you improve your project delivery.
Well, we have honestly, a lot of the work that we need to do to improve our project delivery is thinking through these processes. But we have a really robust internal, and pick up on what Rich was just saying, capital planning program. And, I think we've heard on the one hand, don't be a slave to process, but on the other hand, process gives you a lot. And then if it's done correctly, it can give you the review and the thoroughness of your projects and your project conception that you really need to have to be able to deliver projects, on the time frame you said, for the money that you said. And so just as an example, and so I think within that work and on that kind of capital planning idea and doing that well, there's like, you need to have imagination, right? Like you have to think about like, okay, I'm personally quite an optimist, and I think many people in project delivery are, because it'd be a tough business to be in if you aren't. But I think being able to temper that optimism a little bit to be realistic, and get all of that worked out ahead of time. And just like a simple example is we had a paving project, very small by our standards. Pretty certain we can complete it by the end of this calendar year. But when we were working through the schedule planning, we actually made the finish date in June of next year. And the reason is because if something goes wrong between Thanksgiving and Christmas and you have bad weather and then the asphalt plants shut down, there you are. And sure enough, there was scope that was added for an unrelated water main break. We get that taken care of. And then there's a problem with the asphalt plant. Plant's closed for 3 weeks. And now we're at the end of December, and here we go. And so it required, there was, again, there was conversation internally about this, and people was like, oh, well, there's plenty of time, we can get it done in December. And it's like, that's true, but put yourself, it's a day after Thanksgiving, and you now know that you can't get this done, right? Like, think about that and imagine what you need to be able to solve for that, whether that's a little bit more money, or that's something else about the way you're contracting, or something about how you think about the schedule and how you balance, a reasonable, realistic time for delivery versus, the idealized situation in which this could happen, which is almost never the world we live in.
When you, in adopting your progressive design build approach, has there been any lessons learned you've encountered in terms of addressing any particular challenges or obstacles?
Yes, we're always learning. And I want to follow up on a point that Rich made. It is in many cases, a traditional design bid build delivery system will make sense. And I will say that the project, our South Battery Park City Resiliency Project, which is being delivered as a design bid build, is going very well. And so we will have an opportunity at the end of these projects to compare and contrast a little bit more. But there are certainly situations where that delivery system will make more sense if it's smaller, if it's a shorter duration, and depending on what the details of the project are. With respect to the progressive design build, anytime there's a kind of a foray into a new program, there's a learning curve, and we certainly have had a learning curve. The need to identify a lot of these project elements up front and to get in front of them and make sure that we are preparing ourselves. I mean, in some ways, the progressive part is the part up front with the design, and it's preparing ourselves to go into the second phase. Phase one is the design that gets us to a guaranteed maximum price. So everything in phase one is leading up to the guaranteed maximum price that then allows us to go into phase two, which is turning it over to the design build contractor for construction. And I think that one of the key elements that we have learned is really the importance of integrating that team up front, from the contractor, the designer, the owner, the agencies, the community, really integrating that process so that we are able to provide all of that direction and design input at an early stage, so that we know what we're getting and the design builder knows what they're delivering in phase two.
Thank you. Did you want to add?
Just want to, if I may, one of the reasons that I was particularly interested in progressive design build is this learning phase, where it seems like there's an opportunity, like, again, my executive director referred to this a little bit at the beginning. Big bureaucracies tend to get a little static, and that there's an opportunity for everybody to warm up together and kind of begin to open up a little bit about what the process will be. There's also opportunities in a traditional design build to do that, but they're a little bit different. They're not quite as open. So that learning component cannot be overstated. I think there's like you just pick this one, you pick this one, you pick this one, but it's like no. We all need to know that this works, and we all need to begin to have faith in this together and in these other counterparties.
Great. And for Rich, back to you. Can you share a little bit about what you're doing to incorporate utility work into your project?
Yeah. So DDC, if you guys are not aware, one of the biggest things we do is street work here in New York City. We rebuild the streets, and while we're at it, we fix the water mains and fix the sewer mains, and we joint bid the work with our private utility partners to fix the gas and the electric and everything else while we're down there. And everybody's walked around downtown, you see a construction site, and it's just a big mess of spaghetti. And people back 100 years ago did not keep great records, for better or worse, right? And that is one of the biggest problems we have with traditional design build, because You have to know all the things so the design builder can go do the things, right? And we're hoping, A, that progressive design build will help us with that. They can go out, they can do their investigation periods, they can two-step that and then come to a GMP. But we're also embarking on a longer-term multi-agency, multi-party agreement with mayor's offices leading this between the city, all the various city agencies, including the public utilities like DEP, and then the private utilities, our Con Eds and our Empire City subways and everything else. And Port Authority is also involved in this because you own a lot of stuff going in and out of the airports and the bus terminal right down there and everything else, so that we'll be able to see better all the planning and do better planning and then have tools for people to do that. And it's important to start these things now because we're in the initial discussions, but I don't know if this thing's online and fully functional by the time I retire, I'll be surprised, but you got to start doing the work now or it's not going to happen.
Thank you.
I will just say amen to they didn't keep good records for utilities.
So what are you doing to improve that in terms of better record keeping?
Well, certainly we are making efforts to document what we're finding, but the reality is what we find is not what we expect a lot of the times, because whoever did the work before we got there maybe didn't document it in the same way that that would have liked. But utilities are a major challenge for anyone doing infrastructure work, especially in Manhattan, because there's just constant surprises everywhere you look. So doing more testing during the phase one portion of the progressive design build is helpful. Test pits, and we're doing a test file program in the coming weeks, so that we can really understand a little bit better what's there, and we don't have quite as many surprises during construction.
Thank you. Patrick, we haven't really mentioned collaboration yet. So what kind of things are you doing to improve collaboration on your project?
Sure. So I think, again, and there's been, I've been at the Port Authority since 2008, and I've seen in my time there a real shift from the kind of, more inward looking, we do the thing, and, we don't do community process unless there's like a legal obligation, and then we do the minimum. And, we just don't do business that way anymore. And a project that I've worked on where that's been really big is the Port Street Corridor Improvement Project. For those who don't know, there are really only three main ways into the Port Newark and Elizabeth complex on Newark Bay, where several of the major container terminals are. One of them is via Port Street on the northwest corner. That infrastructure is very old. We had a ramp that leads inbound traffic down to the main spine of the port complex, Corbin Street, that had been reduced to one lane for structural deficiency reasons. And so we have a $220 million project to reconstruct it. It's currently in construction now. And this project affects an enormous number of people. And a big stakeholder who, again, we have no legal obligation to involve is the actual businesses there. The terminal operators, the warehousers, the truckers, thousands and thousands of trucks enter and exit this facility every day. And when it's not working, it's total gridlock. And so the Port Department has something called the Council on Port Performance, which actually just celebrated, is about to celebrate its 10th anniversary, which is a convening group that allows the representatives from all the major sub-industries within the port industry to get together and work on certain kinds of issues together. We set up a task force, like a working group, under that existing umbrella a year ago to start getting the word out about what the major roadway changes were going to be for all of the phases of this very large construction project, to ensure that everybody understood what was going on, what was going to happen, solicit feedback for suggestions. And then now that we're in construction, and the single biggest element of that project, which is the closure of the Corbin Street ramp, which is its major entry point, through a detour that's been constructed specifically to handle that volume, to ask folks how it's going. Are there any improvements? Have they seen any issues? And that's resulted in tweaks to light timing, redeployment of PAPD to help manage traffic in certain ways. And it really, really brings the temperature down on across the board when everybody knows you have a standing forum in which to discuss these matters. It's really been a godsend. It doesn't mean that they always like what we say or what we're doing, but at least everyone understands that we're doing the best we can and we're trying to incorporate realistic feedback into the project.
Just to piggyback on that, certainly the collaboration and the exchange with local residents and businesses is critical and is something that Battery Park City Authority holds in very high regard and prioritizes greatly. But the interagency collaboration is super important for our projects as well. And I want to just note that part of the interagency collaboration that has been really very successful for Battery Park City Authority on our Northwest Battery Park City project has been with the Port Authority because we are building a flood barrier that goes over the path tunnels that come into the city. So you can imagine the complexity of that, but developing these really close collaborations with agencies that are impacted in that we have to really make sure are addressed well has been a really good part of this progressive design build project.
Thank you. And Rich, I think you also had some things you said you're working on related to collaboration.
It's a lot of the same kind of things. Talking with all the other stakeholders, we trying to make sure that everybody's involved on all these things. We're working with all the different utility partners. We had senior reps from all the utility partners and the general contractors in our offices yesterday trying to figure out how we're going to change our joint bidding to make it work better for everybody, right? So it's not just doing the minimum collaboration, it's doing the collaboration that actually moves the project forward, right? It's an expense, but it pays off.
Great, thank you. I think we're down to our last minute, so if you have any questions, Gwen and Patrick and Rich will be available out in the hallway area for some additional questions. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.